Very good. Okay, here we are back again, and we can continue our discussion on utopia, art, and veganism. And Alexis was just getting into kind of the basic definition, and it's an interesting concept that our definition of utopia has changed over time, and it's kind of a reflection of the state of culture and society at the time. What I've been thinking is that I've had this kind of theory for a while, and I guess it's not just mine, but that as technology progresses and consciousness evolves, if these two can come together in a dramatic way, it will affect a very large change throughout culture and society. And it seems like veganism kind of ties in with that nicely. But go ahead and continue, Alexis, talking about these artists that you came across who are expressing their visions of utopia. How did you see that manifesting in art?
Well, as I said, I read these books where they went into detail into all the different types of utopia that have been developed or that have been created over time, starting from like way early in ancient times. So you had like just imagine like the vision of Babylon and then Atlantis and all these different types of utopian worlds that have been thought of, and which I found really interesting was that way back they often just thought of utopian cities, and now in later times they kind of made it more general and had like utopian countries, and then they thought of like even more general thing like the whole world, and just more broad, and went into different levels of incorporating like politics, and not only the city structure, as I mentioned, that you have also different areas of life that are important for this utopian world, and just how a society functions and everything. And most of these artists it was a mix between artists and architecture, because most of the older utopian worlds have been established or have been created by architects who were really into building perfect houses that are symmetrical and perfect cities and everything, and all these different types of norms that they had then, which were important for them to have a utopian city or something that is just created in a certain way that it looks like a star or whatever, just that has like a certain appearance. And later,
Yeah, the idea that there could be like a perfect geometrical shape, and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
interesting that this manifested in architecture, because of course in architecture you're thinking about creating a home for people, and you can see how like self-sufficiency can come up if you're building homes or designing homes. And
yeah,
then some of these artists you referenced, where I went and looked at some of their work. It seemed like a lot of their pieces, they weren't necessarily architecture, but it was like a visual art. They were painters, I think, but
yeah,
they had an architectural quality to them. Um,
yes,
what
yeah.
what were what were some of the names of these artists?
There were different artists, but they were later than the earlier ones I was talking about. For example, Um, it's a Dutch artist. He's called Constant. Is like his first name, and everyone calls, or he's always mentioned as Constant because his last name it's like Nieuwenhuis or something. It's like a new house, but in like a Dutch way, and I don't really know how to pronounce it, so it's like Nieuwenhuis or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, no problem. No
Um,
problem.
that was the one I sent to you because this is the one I'm going to work on for my bachelor thesis, as well as another artist. A later one, Thomas Saraceno. He's from Argentina,
Yeah.
and he's the main artist I'm working on for my bachelor thesis. So yeah, but there were a lot of different artists, and it was always a mix between artists and people who are also interested in architecture and science and things like this. So there were also groups, like for example the Archigram, or I don't know how to say, maybe it's in English the same word, Archigram or something, I don't know how to pronounce it. It was a very known group in the 60s, 1960s. And they, for example, for them, they focused on like these mega structures, these structures that were built, for example, above cities, or like certain like high towers or mobile movable houses that you could plug into other that you can move and just like exchange, and that something. It's very difficult to just get into it now, because like just dive into this, because it's like this whole history behind it. So
yeah, but I understand what you're saying. It's like
yeah.
a kind of futuristic notion of how architecture can work, and some of the principles that come into it might seem a little far-fetched, but they could actually become more possible as technology advances. They do have these. I've seen in Japan that they have these modular homes that
Yeah.
the whole thing's built, and then the thing is just put in place. You know, so it's not too dissimilar from what you're describing.
Yeah.
I wonder if along these lines you could say a little bit about what is a very broad concept, but you know, art is a reflection of something in the popular consciousness, in my mind, and I think it's interesting that that this utopia principle is speaking to you, and that it's this recurring theme that keeps popping up in art, and then how you connected it to veganism. So maybe say a little bit about how is it that art is a reflection of popular consciousness.
Well, I always think that artists, they have like a special position in society, because they don't have to do, they have like a lot of freedom to be creative and to just like yeah, be very sensitive with different aspects, and just to think about things a lot. And they don't have, of course, they have pressure because they have to earn money and blah blah to live and whatever, but they have like a certain position that they are able to, yeah, reflect on things and to just be creative and invent new worlds, just in any kind of way, whether it's just an emotional new world, or whether it's a utopia new world. Just they create something, and they have the possibility to do this, the opportunity. So they, in my opinion, they are more likely to think about how to change the world in a way that looks good to them, and they have no limits. They can just imagine, I don't know, an elephant flying, and people just using an elephant and whatever. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's just that they have the opportunity to just create some crazy fantasy world, and I feel like this is very important, to have like this flexibility in your head, that you can just get new ideas. And that's, I think, why it's so prominent in the artist world to
You
think
know,
about.
yeah, I think it's such a huge topic,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking of impressionist painters and a music that was classical forms of music that came about at the same time as the impressionist painters,
Yeah.
and how this shift in perception in art, and what was created and what was accepted by society, these things had very powerful changes in society as a whole. So I guess it's very complex, but it's like these ideas, they bubble up out of consciousness, and then they get expressed through certain artists, and then if the time is right, the society accepts these
Yeah.
ideas, and then there's once the ideas are expressed artistically, and then they get put out into the broader society, the principles become accepted on a broad level, and they change society.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something similar. This one artist said he's called Buckminster Fuller, and he's also very important for the utopian architecture or art. Um, he said something similar, that you create a utopian world, and it's not that this utopian world is so weird and strange, because if it's very good, it's not the same, of course, what he said, but I'm just trying to get the same point,
Yeah, you
because
paraphrase.
yeah, that what you create is very good, then it's like the world we are living in right now. It's the strange world that you should think about, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, and you know what you're reminding me of here is, you know, in Eastern traditions, Eastern spiritual traditions, they characterize the world as Maya, or illusory, and I like what you're saying here. It's the artist is suggesting that the imaginary world, or the world that the artist creates, has as much validity as what we would call the actual world. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you can you can you type for me in the text the names of these three artists you've mentioned, and I can include them. I can annotate the video later on. Um,
Sure, I will give them to you. Um, yeah, also what I wanted to say is, of course, you had the artists, and then you had, for example, also people who were very interested in politics. So you had like Karl Marx, who had made his communist world that was utopian to him. So there were all these different aspects, and I thought that veganism is just like one more aspect to it. And I found that a lot of artists, they focus very much on this aspect of like empathy, and just this harmonious living with each other, and having the possibility to be creative, and to just live and do what you want to do. And I kind of found that this also was very close to veganism, because you also are very empathetic, and you also think about other people, and not only people, but also people, like all the creatures around you. So it's kind of connected, and I found it very nice to read these things, because a lot of artists, for example Constant, but also Thomas Saraceno, they said something that went into this direction, this about this living passionately and together, and they never really actually translated it into a veganism or a vegan way of thinking, but it was so close to it. That's why I
yeah,
felt like it's
yeah,
kind of something that we have to talk about.
yeah, yeah, totally. And you know, I love what you're saying about the ethics. I mean, to me, you know, a greater respect for other sentient beings, other animals, reflects a higher consciousness, higher level of consciousness. And then, just on a practical level, the environmental effects of a vegan diet, and then the economic effects are
Yeah.
so huge. I mean, the economic effects in terms of being able to feed the world's hungry,
Yeah.
and the environmental effects in terms of not destroying the planet
Yeah.
because of pollution. Uh, these obviously kind of lead to, you know, a more harmonious world where people are actually fed, where everyone's actually fed, and you know, it's interesting. Have you heard of this? There's a kind of experiment that was done where this guy took a computer and he put it in some very poverty-stricken areas. They just took the computer and they stuck it in there, and they didn't really tell anybody what to do with it. And these
Yeah.
kids came and started using the computer, and the kids kind of figured out, without being taught, how to use it. And now they're like teaching themselves. And to me, this kind of relates to what we're talking about. It's like technology can start to advance so rapidly. I mean, if we were to look at our society now and what percentage of our society has access to modern technology and even food and basic necessities compared to, say, 200, 300 years ago,
Yeah.
there's a tremendous improvement, even though there are still serious problems that we need to overcome. But in terms of just numbers of people who have access to food and shelter, I think
Yeah.
it's on a huge positive trend.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, also what I wanted to say is that, Utopia is a place that is so far away and that is just perfect and not reachable. But what I found very interesting is that art, like the trend from artists, the utopian worlds that they create is really close to our world, and they kind of have. I felt like there was this shift in mindset that they don't create a world that is so far away anymore, but they use what is there and they just transform it into something better and something that is not it's actually reachable. So that's also an aspect that I really found very close to veganism, because also veganism is becoming more popular and it's not so far away anymore. It's very close, and
Yeah.
that's also something that it, they used to have only drawings and sketches from utopian worlds, or like wrote about it, wrote stories, and something that was so abstract. And for example, Thomas Aracino, he had these huge installations of nets just going through and creating different levels where you can go into, and you just had these huge spheres made of some plastic or something that looked like from Avatar, or I don't know. But you could go into this and step into it, and you just went through the air inside of these nets and into the different levels. So it's so close, because for him, for example, he also was thinking about this mega structure, something that you could work with, something that is like above, for example, the city, or that just goes and blends into the environment, and that uses, for example, nature, because his nets, they like the structure it derives from the spiders and from their webs, for example. And he studied spiders and put like different types of spiders together and saw what kind of different nets they created, whether they used the old net from the other spider before, or whether they destroyed it but they actually used it and made it like a stronger net even than it was before. So he uses what there is at the moment and just tries to create something new and something that is very close and that you can actually you can experience, and that you can just see, and you see how close a utopian world is, and that just by doing something and just by actually acting and yeah,
Well,
not
I think
thinking about.
yeah, I saw one of the pieces that you're describing, and it was really cool. It was like these nets, like you're describing, they were kind of like intricate, intricately woven ropes, and they were cast over wide areas of space, and then
Yeah,
the people who are viewing these artistic expressions can interact with the art, and and it was really cool that people were just kind of having fun in these spaces. You
yeah,
know, it
yeah,
was like these three-dimensional artistic pieces, which are really cool to look at, but they're also, you can also kind of play with them and go in there and lie down on one,
yeah,
and so
yeah,
they're really, they have a beauty, and you're bringing up a really interesting point, which is this kind of advancement in science in terms of our understanding of the natural world,
hmm,
and using these physics principles and geometrical principles and biological principles to create new technology, and perhaps use that to influence architecture, uh, and and I love the hopefulness here, and you're making me think of, there are a lot of sensitive souls in society who often just can't bear to live in a society that has so many problems and so much suffering. And I think there's an unfortunate kind of pervading notion in culture that a utopia is unattainable and unachievable. And I love what you're saying. You're saying it's really close to us. It is achievable. We can do it. This bubbling up of veganism within culture is an expression of a possible utopia. And these artists' renderings of their notions of utopia will kind of percolate out into culture in a way that can be expressed in perhaps a more utilitarian manner. So I think it's really powerful stuff.
Yeah, what I also find really nice with this works is that people, they go into these nets and you can feel the movement of the other person next to you, or the other person just somewhere on this net, because it just, like, the vibrations go through the net, and it's kind of a kind of communication, and you notice people around you and you start to talk about this situation, how fun it is, or just some topic that suddenly occurs, and it gets people to communicate with each other and to actually to feel the steps that they make. And this is something that I find very important, because you get very sensitive to how people around you act, and that makes it kind of influences how you react in that situation. And this sensitivity is something that people often, they kind of lose because they get so disconnected, and that's, I think, the first step to actually, or maybe the second step, because first you have to be in a good place yourself, that you don't have any needs for yourself, like your body and whatever.
Right.
But
right.
instead, notice other people and to notice how they move and how they react, and maybe why, that you can understand why they react that way. And this is some, like, this sensitivity that people have to, in my opinion, they have to regain it. And this is something that is important, because before, I don't know if it's possible really to get people to care about, for example, animals and something, if they don't have this.
Yeah, this is a huge point. I love what you're saying, Alexis. And you know, I studied yoga for several years, and I taught yoga. And one of the things I loved about this teacher that I studied with, his name is Godfrey Devereux, brilliant teacher. He's a Brit who teaches in France now. But his way of teaching was to cultivate sensitivity, rather than having yoga be this practice whereby you strive for a more physically fit body, or you even strive for perceived heightened spiritual states. Rather than any of that, the whole practice was about cultivating sensitivity. So, and if the purpose of the practice is to cultivate sensitivity, that totally changes your experience of yoga. If you're practicing yoga for some future benefit, then it's a carrot and stick thing. But if you're cultivating sensitivity, it's simply about heightening your awareness. And when you do that at a physical level, it also affects the way you interact with the world. You become more sensitive to phenomena in the world, other people, other suffering, perhaps. I think the point you're making, it's common within the artistic community. You know, artists are sensitive. They're often very sensitive, and they're often sensitive to subtle energies that are coming up into consciousness, and they're often expressing. They're often on the leading edge of what's next in society.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I find that's something that makes up artists, because they have to be at some point very sensitive, because otherwise you cannot go that deep into your art. I don't know, but I find that this sensitivity, or just being able to recognize other people and recognize things around you, and also what is going on inside of you, is so important. And that is something that a lot of people lost, I find. They just they're like in this wheel of things that they're doing all the time, and something, they're so disconnected, and that's why so many people are getting depressed. I've met so many people now who are just depressed, people from university I study with, and I find this very shocking, because it's something, in my opinion, that it's created by how the way we live, and it's for me, this is like the first step is to create an awareness before people can actually care about things like veganism, really.
You know, it's really interesting what you're referring to here, and I'll just share something with you that's coming to my mind. I don't know, have you ever been to a third world country?
Yeah.
Well, have you ever, I don't know if you've experienced this personally, and it's kind of changing now a little bit because some of these third world countries are changing, but it's been my experience that when I go out into the country, there can be extreme poverty where people don't have the kind of modern accoutrement that we're accustomed to, and yet you find some of the happiest people in the world. And then
Yeah.
you come back to Western culture, which is so intellect oriented,
Yeah.
and we have this tremendous advanced technology, and yet it's not as happy a culture. There's not as much
Yeah.
happiness.
Yeah.
So I think these things are going to come together. I think that happiness and joy are kind of an expression of a utopian society. I would correlate, you know, those emotional qualities with a utopian society where people are actually happy and satisfied and fulfilled. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so so I'm hopeful. I think veganism will play a role in that, and I think there has to be like what you're saying, a heightened sensitivity so that people can actually connect with what they really want to do and what they feel good about doing, and be able to do that instead of being forced into some kind of system that they hate and that they despise and that they do only for a paycheck.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Um, what do I want to say? There were different aspects, but first, the one that it's true definitely that people in these countries often are very happy compared to our country, our first world countries. Especially, for example, Germany. I find that a lot of people from other countries, they say that German people, they're very lonely and very disconnected,
Huh.
uh, which I find very interesting to hear from other people. And maybe that's the reason why people are getting more and more unhappy. And also, what I wanted to say, was that I mean, veganism is kind of a utopia, to think that the whole world would just eat like plants and fruits and vegetables and whatever. It is a utopian thought, but I find it very important that people, they don't think utopia is the no place anymore. It's something closer.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And that
You,
very easy to reach if you just rethink a little and just try to work with what there is at the moment.
you know, a movie that keeps coming up into my head, which I don't know if you've seen. I have not seen it, but I've heard the plot of the film. It was a Matt Damon film, and the notion was that the wealthiest members of society move off the planet, and they live on another planet, and they leave all those who are poor back on Earth, and they create this utopian world that's accessible to all the ultra wealthy, but
Mm,
the folks that are poor don't get any of those benefits. And
mm,
the movie's about this guy going to that world and kind of breaking it open so that everyone can access this wealth and success. And it seems like we're kind of in this place in society right now, especially I don't know what it's like in Europe, but in the United States there's been this kind of shift towards tremendous increase in wealth among very few of the population, and an
yeah.
actually decrease in wealth, a kind of a diminishing of the middle class to the point where it almost no longer exists.
Yeah.
And
I read that there was the study on this oligarchy society or something.
oh, yes, yeah. Is that you're not thinking of that French author, are you? Piketty?
No, I was thinking about the study that Princeton did to, and another one, another university, to kind of more prove that the U.S. is not really a democracy, but more of a like oligarchy
Yes,
society.
yes, or plutocracy. Yes, absolutely. I think that's right. I think that's easily observed. You know, it's
Yeah.
run by wealthy people. Yeah. Um, so anyway, and I think in a real utopia there will not be that kind of class distinction. So
Yeah.
the it's interesting that in the Hindu tradition there's this caste this tradition of the caste system where they had these 4 different levels of society, but at its inception it was not intended to be a system that stratified society, but simply rather a system of, you could say, labeling of people according to their role in society.
Yeah.
And ideally, the ruling class treated the serving class, if you will, with as much dignity and respect as was due anyone, you know. So, but then it seemed to have devolved into this kind of classism that we have today, which I hate. I hate classism. Uh,
I think this always happens with like any kind of division of people, you know. We have this, just as an example, we have the school system in Germany where you have 3 different types of school. You have one that is like you have it's called Gymnasium, Realschule, and Hauptschule. So you have the one school type where it ends after the 10th form, and people they go and do manual work, and then you have the one, the more middle type between the two that also goes into the 10th, but then afterwards you can do like a degree or what's it called? You can graduate like in a certain subject only, and then you
yeah,
have like the last one, the gymnasium, where you have like your normal graduation and you can go to university. And you just had these three things you in the beginning because people they have different qualities. Some people they are better doing manual labor because they just are, and others they prefer in the end studying books, you know, and that's why they went to university. And at some point, very early, I guess, it kind of went into this hierarchical structure that this type of school is better, and people that try to get their kids to this type of school so they can go to universities and have more jobs where they can earn better. So this is just as an example something that creates very easily.
right. And I'm so with you on that. And it's like, why is it if someone who enjoys studying books and goes and gets a doctorate, why does that then mean that they're entitled to a salary that is 100 or 1,000 times the salary of someone who chooses to do physical labor? I mean, you know, 1,000 times, you know, or a CEO salary that is 1,000 times the salary of the frontline worker.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, it's just crazy. It's crazy.
I mean, of course, you have to see what kind of jobs are they doing. How much did they invest into getting this job? Like, how much did they study without getting paid? Like, how many years? And also, how much? What is it called? If you have to take care of something. I always forget this word. If you're in
Responsibility?
charge of something and people depend on you and things.
Oh, right, right, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah. And,
say
uh,
a single mom who has to take care of her kid, and so she has to leave school early. You know.
yeah, and also this, I mean, also in like a firm or something where you have like a certain position. Oh, wait a second. I need this word. Okay.
Right.
No. Um, this is a word I always forget. I don't know why, because it's so common and so easy actually. It's responsibility, yeah. How
Yeah.
much responsibility you have. Um, if you're someone who has to look out for I don't know how many hundreds of people, thousands of people, and if there's like some mistake happening and all comes back to you, then maybe it's more understandable because of this responsibility, because of all the extra work you have to put in and all the extra effort to make sure that everything runs well, and maybe that's a reason why people have like different payments. I mean, there are different salaries. I mean, there are, in my opinion, it is kind of justified that at some point they are a little bit different, the salaries maybe per hour, for example, but of course not in that range as it is like someone, I don't know, who, of course there are a lot of examples, but
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think it's you have to have some kind of incentive-based system. I mean, you could say that part of the reason that the Soviet Union collapsed was that they didn't have the incentive-based system that we have in capitalism. I think there's a lot of other factors there. Of course, maybe perhaps the main one being it was a dictatorship, not really, not necessarily a real communist state, but yeah, I think what you're saying is true. There's got to be some kind of incentive. There has to be some kind of mechanism for rewarding people who work harder than others, and at the same time, there needs to be some kind of regulation so that these salaries don't just become these astronomical. I mean, I feel like basically what's happened is that the leaders in various fields across society have accepted within their own communities higher and higher salaries, and
mm,
and so it's just become acceptable or necessary to pay people these astronomical salaries, and somehow, people that are just doing the menial work, they don't have enough power to change that. We have this decrease in labor unions, so that labor unions have less and less power. Uh,
mhm.
I don't know, man. I think it's dangerous in the sense that if it goes far enough, you could get a revolution. You could get the working class revolting if it reaches too far a level of disparity.
Yeah, yeah, sometimes, but I feel like I don't know, but I feel sometimes that society is getting less and less educated at some kind of way. So
Hmm.
I'm not sure if they would actually do this, because for me it's really strange to see how people from, for example, from the entertainment business, they earn so much just to make an appearance somewhere, where I would think that that's outrageous because they don't really have to work for this certain type of job that they're doing, what they're getting paid for at that moment.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they almost worship them,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
They idolize them so much that I feel there's like some kind of maybe education getting lost. That I don't know how to explain, but this is how I feel. Like people, they just sit in front of the TV and watch some reality show or something and love these people, think that they're famous and these people are great, and they just don't really do a lot besides standing in front of a camera and doing everyday life. And I don't know, there's something getting lost in between.
Yeah. 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 That's so true. That's so true.
So
Well,
that's
let
why I don't really know if they would actually revolt against, this kind of this class, because they are like these ideal people who look so great, and you know.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think there is kind of a, I don't know if you call it a mob mentality or something in the broader culture, and then you could say that some of them are so consumed with just trying to meet their expenses by working jobs that they're unhappy in, that they don't really have time to think. uh, but I don't know. I don't know. I think I think there could reach a point where people become so dissatisfied that they would revolt. But I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Maybe they're just people are accepting of the circumstances, and they don't find it unpleasant. I don't know. It
And
doesn't.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes I also feel like this way of how they eat and how like badly nourished they are and how sick they get, that they get more and more dependent on certain industries and certain people, that this kind of makes them even less capable of revolting or thinking about it, or like thinking that this might not be the right way or might not be normal. That
Yeah.
there's this mechanism that kind of keeps people from thinking by themselves.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could say commercialism is designed to get people thinking about, consumption, and people are so surrounded by this incessant commercialism and effort to have them be reduced to consumers, and I think a lot of people are. A lot of people are on a treadmill, like you said, just consuming, uh, wanting the next iPhone, the next best computer, the
Yeah,
the newest clothing. Uh, yeah, so it's an interesting thing within the art community that you have artists. Now, of course, some artists are make tremendous sums of money when they become accepted on a wide scale level. But a lot of artists, I think, there's the classic, the starving artist. There are artists who insist on creating their art in their own way, regardless of whether or not society applauds them, and they may die unheard of, and yet they pursue that vision. That's a very interesting phenomenon, I think.
yeah, yeah. There are so many of them. Really nice.
Yeah, yeah. Nice people. Yeah, yeah.
And
Nice
actually, they
people.
work really hard. I just had this studio visit over at. It was a studio from 10 different artists. They shared it together. It was a flat, and they showed us their like their rooms or their half rooms or whatever they shared. They had like three people maybe in one room, or maybe one, depending on how much they put in there, of course. But we went in there and they showed us their rooms, and when they were done with their room, it was already, I don't know, 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock on a Friday evening, Friday night. They just sat down again and just kept on working. And I mean, there's so many people, so many artists who are so dedicated and work very hard. And of course, it's also, I mean, you have to think about maybe the value for society as well. I mean, it's maybe a bit strange to call it that way or to put it that way, but um, yeah, it's
No,
a
I
very
agree with you.
complicated topic.
Yes, yeah, it is. It is. I mean, art is it's a very interesting aspect of society, and you could say, art is one of the things uh, that reveals the difference between humans and animals,
Yeah,
and the fact that humans are expressing these themes through artwork. It's very amazing phenomena. And another interesting thing on this is how artists use art to express what's going on in them at the time. It can be a kind of a form of release or catharsis that helps an artist kind of cope with the world.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Not only the with yeah, inside of him, but also what is going around. It's politics and everything. So.
Right,
And we
right.
come back to the utopian thing because they think about this and they reflect it. And
So do you think a vegan world is possible?
yes, I think so. I'm not sure if it will ever be completely vegan because um, I mean, I think it would be possible. It's like because it's already gradually um, emerging and like getting more popular. But I'm not sure if it actually will ever get completely veganized because, um, I mean, meat is really a very important part of our evolution of not because maybe I'm not sure if it actually influenced it in any type of way because some people say yeah we needed meat to have bigger brains or something. Some people say it was the cooked food, but it's a different topic. But it's just part of tradition of culture, and it's important for some people, and it's not really in a certain amount. It's not really affecting our health that badly. So I'm not sure if it will ever be completely, like, eating meat or something will ever be completely diminished or abolished, but um, I think it would be possible. It's not so far away.
Yeah, yeah. I think as this data comes in, you know, from doctors like McDougall, Barnard,
Hmm.
uh, Esselstyn, they're doing studies now that are revealing the superiority health-wise of this approach. And
Yeah,
as that becomes more evident, I think it'll be really hard for people to continue eating the old way. And as the environmental damage that's associated with it becomes more recognized. Um,
yeah. For example, I just talked to a guy from the library because I was eating my strange stuff in quotation marks because um, yeah, because I have like all these allergies, so my food is not even looking like a normal burrito or something, but it's really just rice with zucchini or just like it looks very plain to some
yeah,
people, or it's like a
yeah,
usual gluten-free like flakes, muesli flakes that are just made of brown top millet or something, or it's just cornflakes or whatever I take just to have something to eat. But
yeah.
yeah, he was asking about it, and I told him, and I just said that he should maybe look for himself more, and just gave him some names. So and he did this, and he just wrote me, yeah, I'm already a week now vegan, except for a little bit of chocolate I had. And I thought, oh, that's so cool, you
That's
know?
excellent. That's excellent.
Yeah,
What's the story with your brother? Is your brother is he getting a little more into veganism?
I think so. He just posted this article about research of how unhealthy animal protein is and how, for example, it promotes cancer, which I find very nice because, not so long ago he posted an article on my Facebook site where it was like, oh, vegans are unhealthy. I don't know, it was just a stupid article in some newspaper. But yeah, so I find it really nice. I sent him this like a care box or care package or whatever,
Yeah,
uh, with like all these different types of vegan sweets and chocolates and like a spread and like a B12 supplement thing, the one you can just put in your mouth, and
yeah,
um, the sublingual one, and just a couple of things that I put in there. Okay, the first one he tried, he actually didn't like. He said it was kind of bland and didn't really taste very good, but he said that, yeah, at least it's healthy or something like this. But yeah, I think he tries, and I like this. It's nice. I don't want to urge him to do something that he doesn't want to, and he is looking at things by himself now, so it's like the inception has been made, and
All right.
that's great.
Well, listen, I've probably asked you this before, but do I remember correctly that do you draw a little bit? Do you like to draw?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to paint a lot during high school and went to art school besides or next to my school. And also I sketch and do drawings with like charcoal and things like, these nude drawings to just study different proportions and things like this as well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
haven't really done a lot actually the last months or so. because I'm kind of busy, but
You know,
yeah.
there's a book I'd like you to look into if you're not if you're you may already be familiar with it. Have you heard of the Red Book by Carl Jung?
No, I don't think so.
See if you can check this out. Some libraries carry an edition of it. It's really expensive to buy, but it's a book that Carl Jung created while he was evolving as a psychologist, psychotherapist, and he was an artist himself, and uh, and there's just some amazing artwork in it, and it kind of expressed things he was going through. It was kind of a recording of dreams, but it's fascinating. I think you might enjoy it.
Yeah, sounds nice. Very nice. Thank you. I will look into that.
Um, I think I think I will end our broadcast here, but
Yeah.
don't hang up yet. Let's see. Hang on a sec. So thank you all for watching, and feel free to make any comments. As always, vegans are welcome to join in on these discussions. We'd love to have anybody that wants to participate. So feel free to hop on anytime. And thanks so much, Alexis.
Thank you as well. It was very nice.